For the young professionals out there in the marketplace, I don't think there's probably any skill something I missed out that has to be there. But the one thing that I will say,
Yeah.
you have to be passionate. You have to love data. You have to love to solve business problems. If that's not your something you want, then don't come.
We are going to talk about what recruiters look for in data scientists when they're hiring them, right? And this is a very pertinent question today, especially since talent is one of the most talked about topics, and there is a scarcity is obviously being observed. What is it about the data science or the AI field, right, that makes it so hard to hire good talent? And why is there such an evident supply demand gap even today, after like 10 years of the industry now, more than that?
So, look, I mean, a lot has been talked and printed about this space. It has been growing fairly rapidly. Pandemic has accelerated the demand in the field many-fold because of the digitalization and analytics, data science, AI being the primary contributor to the digitalization space. So demand is evident, right? And also over the last many years, a few things have been has become very easy, right? So the compute has become very effective, efficient, cheap. Storage is now very cheap, right? And the tools and platforms are proliferating. What has not gotten a chance enough is for the talent to evolve the way the industry and the technology has evolved, right? So definitely there's a demand, and as because the space is still fairly nascent compared to the other spaces, the gap is there, and the gap is widening as the demand is increasing. The reason for why the supply is not there are many, and I think we're going to talk about those at length. One definitely is the space to evolve, the space to for the talent to mature and get the experience that works in the field to be effective for businesses is kind of not that evolved yet, and we need a little bit more time to get that.
So the pandemic has probably accelerated, that is true, but are we really still in a nascent stage in terms of data science?
I think what Satyamai said are correct points, but what I think I want to add a little bit more is, when you think about the technology world, we went to the engineering schools and hired in bulk. The guys were just supposed to know computing, how to write codes. That's what it is, and taught them quickly to write codes, and that was it. Data science is a little bit more than that. It's not just putting codes together. It's about knowing mathematical skills, having statistical skills, being able to understand the data. So not many people do come from that background or have that understanding, which is why it is making it difficult. And that's at the, when you're looking at people at the entry level point. When you start to now think about people at senior levels or even at mid levels, you need people who understand business skills, who understand the business reasons as to why this data science AI capability is being implemented. And that's where I think some of the things that he was talking about, the nascency around it, are the issues, because you really don't have people who understand that well as to how that might be applied, how it could really impact, and hence they're not able to translate the business issues into the actual ability. And that's why you have this issue where people are saying, I'm not finding the right data scientists.
Yeah, and there is that shortage is there, but then when you are trying to look at someone, when you go to the market and try to hire a data scientist, how do you differentiate between the two, right? The one which has so probably the resume will say something, but how do you differentiate the one who is probably able to do it, right? So bring a multi-pronged approach to his skill set and then carry out the role. How do you differentiate the two talents?
So look, in my perspective, it depends, right? As Kaushik mentioned, that at what level you are hiring, what role you are hiring for, right? Now, if you're hiring at an entry level, then definitely hard skills play a very strong role. They need to be good at programming, at least in one or two languages, which is pertinent for this field. Most importantly, the ability to think critically, right? So critical thinking and problem solving abilities. Right? What that means? That means if they're able to objectively assess a situation and act accordingly. It's at a fundamental level. So when they join an organization, whatever the field the organization is focusing on, more often than not, they are needed to solve certain problems, right? When they are gotten into practical application of their education, they would need to apply themselves in the appropriate way, which is contextual to the organizational need. So how do you evaluate that? It's a very important question. There are different methodologies, different companies follow. There are different ways to evaluate and look at it. But if we are able to get some of the softer skills out of them, like critical thinking, problem solving, effective communication to an extent, right? I mean, at an entry level, you don't expect them to really have communication in a way, as they will acquire that as they become experienced in the field. But at least if they are able to narrate, if they're able to connect the dots and tell the stories or translate something that they have done, I would look for those kind of traits. So if they have done some projects which they can articulate in a very contextual way as to what was the essence of it, how did it actually solve a problem that they were trying to solve in a very explaining that in a very first principle way, then it's definitely a positive trait, which means they have the ability to think objectively, critically, and also application oriented. Apart from the hard skills like coding languages and academic records should be good as well to be successful in the field.
I think I completely agree with what Satyam said, but there are a couple of things we also look into in addition to that. One of the things that we, as I said, when we were hiring originally in the technology world, we were going to the engineering schools. We continue to go to the engineering schools, but what we are also looking at people who have, let's say, economics background, statistics background. Mm-hmm. We are looking at those and trying to say, hey, can we pull some of those guys in? Could we make them effective in this field? And now, we are finding that there are schools who are offering specialized data science programs. It's still at a nascent stage, but it's important that because you cannot keep data science to be same as engineers. So you need to create those specialized learning capacities and capabilities where you really get people to train to have that critical thinking skills, have that narration skills, have that skills around certain languages that are important in this field, work those things out. So get those skills those schools getting formed, people going through a 2-year, 4-year rigor through those schools are important because they now become the start of the places from where the next generation of skilled people will be coming from.
Correct. And I hear two things. One is you said that you're probably looking for a different set of skills rather than just coding, which was the point you made earlier. How do you gauge that? So for instance, if I'm asked to develop I want to hire someone who's good at modeling, right? I can see his data science modeling. How do you gauge someone's critical thinking?
Yeah, I think there are a variety of ways, and I'll share my perspective. Would be great to hear Kaushik's perspective. Look, I mean, case studies have always been a very effective way, right? So when we used to go to hire from campuses, how they fare in terms of identifying with a case study and how their approach is towards solving those brings out the ability to think and apply, right? Which is very important quality, right? As you start thinking in a little bit of deeper way about the field and what does this field entail to solve, you will see that more often than not, through the data, we are trying to extract information and insights, and the ability to establish the causes and the effects, right? So whenever there is a business problem, we are trying to find out what happened, right? And what happened which caused this, right? Connecting the cause and the effect. So one thing that works very well when they perform well in the cases, or if you are, hackathons these days are getting very, very popular on how do they approach problem in a real way, right? To subject them to some real world situations, and if they're able to connect the cause and the effects of the causality. So a couple of favorite examples, right? So for example, if you look at some of the things which are out there about a year back when Cristiano Ronaldo, right, he moved the Coke bottle and then showed the bottle, and then the Coca-Cola stock dropped, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you look at that, if you are not able to critically examine what happened, with the data, you will believe, right, what you see. Now, when the critical thinking comes in, then you have the curiosity to see behind the scene and look at the data, and you'll find that actually it was not the reason. What happened was something else, right? So when Ronaldo moved the Coke bottle, he moved it around 9:40 a.m. or so, and the Coca-Cola share started dropping 9:43 or so, which means it definitely was not the cause, and that particular day used to be the ex-dividend day for Coca-Cola, and hence it was bound to drop, and all the stocks were dropping as well.
And came very quickly back.
Came it very quickly back, and they almost regained the market share. They surpassed it, right, from about 1.3 billion at the end of the devaluation. Right now, if you what it tells is if somebody has the ability to actually be objective about situation and not to believe what is presented in front of them. The other way is true as well, right? That you do not always believe what the data is telling you, and have the ability to also examine in a way to make sense out of it. Right? So those kind of traits comes out through some of the ways that you want to evaluate: case studies, hackathons, their ability to writing essays, and also these days the traditional ways of subjecting them to group discussion and understand the thought process. Those kind of also brings out the traits apart from the hard skills.
Yeah.
I think different organizations have different ways of evaluating skills. I think the technical skills are easiest to evaluate.
Right.
You put them through some sort of a technical coding exam or whatever it is. There are multiple ways that
Yeah.
one can go through that thing and get that thing addressed. I think what Satyamai said is, can I now find more critical business thinking skills? And that's where I think a lot of the factors have come in, depending on where we are hiring the person in terms of if they're freshers, the expectations are fairly low in terms of what their ability is going to be, to mid-tiers and to the senior guys. And the expectations are going to be very different. And you just work those things out. What is their been experiences? What have they done? How much have they done? And so on and so forth. The other thing that I want to also highlight over here is that if you think about the data science world, you can think about it. It can potentially, for somebody who's starting off, can branch off in two ways. You can be an expert data scientist. That is, you're just working with the data, writing the codes, and being focused on that, which is where you become an expert track data scientist kind of thing. Or you become a more business-oriented person where you have a lot of industry-focused things coming in on, where over a period of time, your traditional data science skills kind of get diluted. You become more industry-focused or business-focused or function-focused, and accordingly track that thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll have to, each person has to go through that, and depending, as I said, at what level you're hiring and what are you hiring for, you start kind of putting more the business thinking, less the data science coding skills, and technical skills, and vice versa. You work those
Right.
things out and play it out a little bit more.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so you mentioned 2 points. One is years of experience, and others is the area of focus, right? Let's discuss the first one, and then we'll come to the area of focus. When you said years of experience, probably when you're hiring someone for a more senior position, there is something to analyze, right? His past experiences, probably this thing. What is the difference when hiring a fresher? How do you identify their potential?
Again, like generally you do typically in any industry, what has been your academic background? For freshers, it's unfortunately that's primarily it. You don't get much data points beyond that. Where have you been to? What have you done? What have been your courses that you have covered? And then there the focus is more technical oriented. Yes, there are business cases that we ask them to go. We kind of ask them some critical thinking questions, but the expectations is much lower at that point. It is more the technical thing. Have you really done it? Have you really understood it? Have you been to a good school? Do you have the right grades? Those things come into the factor.
So you're gauging, for a fresher, you're gauging technical skills more than the other skills.
Yes, because I'm not expecting them to have that industry experience or function experience. I'm just the one that I'm thinking is what Satyamai said is, can they critically think? I'm not expecting them to know supply chain. I'm not expecting them to know customer experience. But can they critically think? Can they critically look at the data point and say, can they look at the underlying causes, not just look into it and just say, oh, this is what it is. Yeah. So I think that's the thinking that we are looking at. But the focus is, can this guy go out there, look at the data, handle the data, assess the data, and write some codes that one can do. So it's more on the technical side.
Yeah, absolutely agree. See, and their ability to learn, right? Because skilling is going to be a lifelong activity. And so no matter where you start, whether you're starting as a fresher or you're experienced in a field, unless you have the ability to learn new things, then survival will be questioned. That is very evident right now. The question is, how do you evaluate one's ability to continuously learn, right? And now,
especially in data science.
Especially in data science. Look, I mean, a lot of this is subjective. There are frameworks around. So in my past organization, one thing that served us very well was when you evaluate performance, right? So you look at their competency, their result, and their mindset. So we used to have a three-dimensional kind of way of looking at things. That what is their competency, and look at their journey, right? And not only in terms of the recency factor, but how they have evolved in their journey and what kind of competencies that they carry. Competency again can be contextual to your organizational need. Then the results that they have delivered consistently, and the mindset, right, is very important, and that's where your aptitude and your attitude towards any situation, as to whether you are looking at it more on a solution approach or looking at highlighting the problems, or what kind of how you're attempting to create different options when you approach any situation. So again, there are a variety of frameworks by virtue of which you can evaluate somebody. A lot of this is subjective, right, which comes through the experiences through which you develop that intuition when you evaluate.
Yeah, and talking of subjective, let's talk about the second aspect you mentioned, the area of focus, right? What are the must-have skills? I think you mentioned one who's more technically focused and one who's more probably business focused. What are the must-have skills for either one of them? Or rather, my another question is, what are the must-have skills for both?
See, I think, for the second one, which is where you are business focused, where you are evaluating and assessing to say, okay, if I'm delivering something, let's say for the financial services company, a capability, it's your experiences around, have you worked with financial services clients before, or have you worked in the financial services industry? Do you know what's going on? Do you know the trends? Because based on that, you can potentially assess what would be the capabilities that needs to be delivered over there. And hence you can look at the data and assess and figure out, okay, well, this is what it needs to be done. The second thing, so it depends, and as I said, it's not something that you pick up at a fresher level, or it's over a period of time you gain that experience, and based on where they are, what they come from, what have they done, who have they delivered for, or which clients have they worked for, which businesses have they worked for, it gives you a good visibility to that thing. When you are looking at a perspective of the technical part of it, it's the ability, Satyam mentioned, was one thing that I missed out, but he clearly highlighted, was the fact of, do you have the capacity to learn?
Right.
Can you keep learning? Mm-hmm. Can you keep being focused on getting new skills, picking up new skills? Because this is a quickly changing world and quickly changing industry where new technologies, new tools are coming up every day. So could you just keep getting yourself into that thing and keep understanding and pulling that thing up? And that's an important one. And that's what we are looking at, because to be effective technically, you have to be very good with tools, technologies, new skills, new techniques into creating models. So I think that's important.
Correct. And now moving on to a very different and a very interesting subject in this area. When you are recruiting someone, the first glimpse into that person is the resume, right? We always look at the resume. That's the first thing that comes to us. How do you differentiate? What do you look for in a resume to understand that this data science talent is better than the others?
That's interesting. You want to go first on that?
I mean, you guys must have seen a lot of resumes, right?
Yes, we do.
Again, I think there's no one answer for this question, because again, it depends on what level we are hiring at. It depends on what positions we are hiring at. Because if you're looking at a senior level, I would anticipate the person to have more business skills than technical skills. Where they have delivered, who they have worked for, what kind of businesses. Is it a consistent thing? Are they being driving one industry? Have they been across multiple industries? So all those kind of things do come into play.
But that's the thing, right? Like, you might get many resumes which are similar. So it's not my point is that there are many resumes which will say that I have good experience, right? There are many data scientists now, and we were just talking about this before as well. Like, they have multiple offers and multiple these things. How do you differentiate, and like what is the differentiating factor? And everybody has now blogs and blogs to read about designing good resumes, and like how do you identify the one which is better? Like,
See,
maybe we can talk this from a fresher's perspective, because I think there's a big difference between these things.
There's a big difference between so when you are hiring experience, then definitely certain things that should correlate, right? So you cannot write everything in your resume if you have 3 years of experience, right? So, but if you're able to highlight something that you have done in a fashion which does highlight the experience of contextually solving problems by application of analytics, data science, whichever role you are hiring for, that kind of becomes evident, right? Because you are supporting your CV with your experience. When it comes to freshers, then again, I mean, certain things are standard, right? So I definitely believe that a good consistency in academic record does play a role, right? You need to have certain level of academic competency. Your curiosity should come out in terms of your participation outside academics as well, right? So if you have done certain social activities, certain initiatives that you have taken, if you highlight certain extra academic activities like sports that you have played some kind of a role in your schools and colleges, if you are able to highlight those, which does show that you are not boxed in one of the areas, and you're open to kind of being modified.
Yeah, that's extracurricular active. Probably that's for any resume, right? Like
that's for any resume, but particularly for analytics and data science. Again, I mean, look, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't. When you're at an entry level, certain things should be similar, right? Because again, I truly believe that it doesn't require at an entry level that kind of specialized focus. Right? Yeah. If you have the right aptitude, if you have the right attitude, you'll be able to do well in this field like any other field. Yes, I mean, if you are a statistics graduate, or if you're taking any kind of quant stream, it definitely kind of adds to that advantage, but it shouldn't be a no-show. Right?
One thing that I would suggest for anybody who's coming into this field, right now, when we were growing up, probably internships were not that big thing. But right now, everybody's doing internships.
Internship, yeah.
You should be doing internships.
Okay.
Internships. You should be doing internships, which is relevant to this field. You might be doing just 3 months of just data handling. But at least if you have shown an aptitude for that, I think that's the key thing. So internships are important. The academic thing that Satyamay mentioned, that's clear, that's consistent, that has to be there. But the internships will show that this person is interested in this thing instead of just generically looking at everywhere else.
Correct.
And absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's a very good takeaway. Internships, like do more internships, include them, right?
Yeah.
And one another interesting, I was just having a conversation with the recruitment team at Analytics India magazine, right? And they were saying one of the things is that for now we move from freshers to experienced people. They have been a part, many professionals, they have been a part of teams that have done extraordinary projects, but they have just tagged along. Right? They have not actually done them, or like they were not the main player in the carrying out. They were probably doing some this thing. Is there a way to segregate the two? Is there a way to say that this guy did it and like this thing? Because that is something that they are really struggling with, identifying the right talent. Because that's like
at a senior level, whether you are tagging along, whether you are active participant, the question is, are you expecting this person to go and write the code? Then there's a technical fashion where you can work it out. On the other hand, if your ability is to go out there and be more the business guy, kind of assess the client situation and being able to identify the right use cases to deliver to the client, or look at the data to be able to do it. The question then is that even if the guy has tagged along, is he able to communicate the story well? That means he understands what is being done.
Sure.
And that is it. And the other thinking for the critical thinking and other things will come out of the interviews.
Yeah.
So those things should be, if experienced people are going out there and doing the interviews, they will be able to get the wheat from the chaff.
So interviews are play an important role.
Yes, and you see, I also think that the organizations need to do a little bit better job in terms of their sourcing and in terms of their approach to hiring, right? Many times we end up doing straitjacketing because we are probably not very clear about what we are hiring for, right? Because this field has many definitions now. I mean, it starts from left-hand side to the right-hand side, and then there are verticals which come in. So you start with a data architect, through data engineer, through data analyst, business analyst, data scientist, super data scientist, and AI specialist, you name it, right? Now, if you, as an organization you want to hire data science skill, you need to be very clear that what kind of skill you are looking for. So if your data is not matured enough to apply machine learning, you end up hiring somebody who is specialized in machine learning, but your data itself is not there for him to work for, right? So I think there's a little bit of maturity that needs to come in the industry in that sense as well, where bring in clarity in terms of what your context is, and then have a very good hiring plan.
Yeah.
Obviously, there is a supply gap, right? So even if you are looking for the right talent and you do not have the right supply, so you need to be open to skill them right as well. So for example, although we are very conveniently bifurcating by data engineering by data science, but then there's a lot of overlaps as well, right? So if you are able to hire for the skill which is a bit closer to proximity to what your context is, and be open to skill them, for what your roadmap is. And as Kaushik very rightly mentioned, that given the experience level that you're hiring for, the business context understanding also becomes very important, right? So if you are a retail company and you're looking for retail analytics, given where you're looking for the overlap and the openness for them to skill, that kind of an experience, if not the direct experience, but the adjacent field experience, will always help.
Okay.
So if I can also add to what Satyamaya said, there's something else. Let's say I'm working in a consulting company, I'm hiring for a consulting company.
Yeah.
I would like to see if the guy either has some very strong business experience, that is for senior people, or he has consulting experience. So if he's come from similar company like ours. If I'm hiring for a startup, and I don't want to talk for startups because I'm not working for startups, but if I'm hiring for startups, I am also looking for people who have that attitude of do it all. Because in startups, you do not have in big organizations structured way of doing things. Can they handle a lot of different things? Do they have that mindset to do that thing? So those things, those cultural nuances do come into play, especially when you're starting to hire mid to senior level people, as to what kind of things do you bring to the table. Junior level, as we said, it's very easy. Are you expressing interest in this area? Do you have a strong academic rigor? Easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think so. From whatever we have discussed, one thing that I've realized is there is no one definite answer. So if there is like one piece of advice from each one of you before we end the podcast to young professionals who want to get hired as a data science professional, what would it be?
Okay, so again, we're coming to the same thing, that if you're hiring freshers, then definitely look for certain hard skills, right? The kind of projects, the kind of contextual ability to defend what they have done, right? In terms of practical application, internship definitely is a plus, and not only just being there, but also delivered something, or which would come out as their curiosity and interest to learn new things and apply themselves. Although I would not be very strong as yet in terms of their coding ability, but one coding skill will definitely help in this field, like a Python or an R. Python definitely helps, or some hard skills like SQL will definitely help. Although the industry is moving towards low code, no code platforms, right? So it's not a must skill, but it's a great to have skill, and the ability to interpret, right, what this field brings on. In terms of softer skills, definitely the ability to think in first principles, the critical thinking, communication needs to be fair enough in terms of ability to comprehend, listen carefully, and interpret in the right way. Those are the few things, and again, I mean, teamship always helps, right? So if the attitude towards working as a team, right, get the bottlenecks out and help each other, that is always going to be remain. That will always remain the sought after skill, even like 50 years from now. Those are the things I look for, and then at experience level, it will vary, right? Some different things.
So, for the young professionals out there in the marketplace, I don't think there's probably any skill that Satyam I missed out that has to be there. But the one thing that I will say, you have to be passionate about it. You have to love data.
Mm-hmm.
You have to love to solve business problems. If that's not something you want, then don't come into this field.
Okay, with that note,
Passion
that's a
definitely.
mic drop moment.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
that's right.
Thank you so much, Satyam. Thank you so much, Kaushik.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
for having us.